I'd like to welcome you, ladies, gentlemen, and all in between, because this is a night on the post-binary, where we will be bypassing actually the traditional divisions between male, female, feminine, masculine. Also, I learned tonight that TASHWEESH means background noise, soft, but still background noise. So feel welcome to hush a little. But still. And a third announcement is that at some point in our talk, I will be taking a brain break, and I will be asking you to ask your questions. I will not ask you in the end. I will ask you somewhere in between when I feel that I need to digest all the information, because these guys, men, women, female, these guests are all very, very interesting, full of new things to me. And here comes the last announcement, is that the post-binary reality is a new reality to many people, to me in particular. So I cannot guarantee that I will be using the correct words and denominations. I asked you how you would be like to refer to, and you too, but I think I'd like to free myself to make mistakes still. I'm not gonna try to be perfect tonight. So welcoming Tucké Royal and Sorour Darabi from Paris and Berlin, if I'm correct. The first question that the Goethe-Institut and Beursschouwburg had for you was not one of my own, and that was how the post-binary practices are intertwined in your artist practices, right? But I think there's a question before that. I think before introducing part of your identity into your artistic practice, you have to introduce the post-binary into your identity and somehow feel that it's part of you. So I'd like to ask about that first. How at which point in your life, or which event or happening made you feel that you did not fit one or the other, or you surpassed it? Yeah, you both have microphones in your chair hidden. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I think that started very, very early with me. I mean, it must have happened in my childhood, yeah, the first time, when I was searching for key moments or for heroes and heroines, and I was not very convinced with the reality, I would say. And it took me, I mean, it still goes on. It takes a lot of time to dig out what I would say is my family, or what my ancestors are. And then, yeah, I mean, and after a while, I mean, also, it took a lot of time to understand what I'm searching for, because the I mean, I don't want to blame my parents, but also the society in which I grew up was not telling me about me, for example, or about a lot of people I get to know the last years. It was somehow tough work to find ways to also to leave the promised path. But I mean, it also, yeah, there was so much beauty in getting away from the major narrative. But I was very, very sure from early years on that I'm missing a lot of stories in the picture. And I mean, there are reasons why they are missing, because there was, like, yeah, colonialism, and there was a lot of violent exclusion in the past, and it's still tough to dig out those stories.
Did it take a move? Because I've done some background checking, and you come from a rather small town in Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally has under 20,000 inhabitants, I think. It's really small.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's not a really open environment to discover otherness, right? Isn't it a city-bound thing, or a metropole-bound thing, or did it take a move for you? Did you move to Berlin to discover this?
Yeah,
or?
sure,
Mm.
sure. I was very sure that I have to move to Berlin in my case, but also, I mean, yeah, as you said, or as we talked before, I mean, people make so-called mistakes, and I think for me it's not about making mistakes, or it's not. If I have the feeling that someone wants to connect, or that someone is willing to understand, then I'm pretty open to take a few lessons, and I also would like to get the chance for my own to do better if people trust me, or people are able to trust me, that I can follow, or that I can, I don't know, go together in a way. Also in a also if it's about coexistence, then it's also about. I mean, it mustn't be the big harmonic story, but it's also about coexistence. And I mean, for example, in this way, I also felt. I mean, I also talked about my grandmother upstairs, and she was, for example, she was one person that always gave me the feeling to be with me wherever the road goes. And this is a good feeling. I mean, you can have that feeling everywhere. You can also move to the big city and meet a person that is calling themselves a feminist, and it feels rough.
And it feels. What was the last?
I mean, it feels, I don't know, it feels rough, or it feels.
Okay, it doesn't feel as inclusive, really.
Yeah. I mean, this is not it doesn't come automatically with people, I don't know, saying
what
words.
they are rather than showing what they are.
Yeah.
And Sorour, it was very interesting that the same question I asked you before. Did you first come out being a person, or and then integrate it into your artist practice? Because that's what I thought. And then you said no. I first came out as an artist, right? Did I understand correctly? And then, so you didn't integrate it in your artist practice, the fullness of your identity, but it was before, it was in your personal life, it was in your artistic practice. So it's the other way around with you?
I think for me also it was about when I was child. I couldn't really define myself in a binary way. And I remember when I was like 2 years old, somebody said me in the street, "You are a girl or boy?" And I was like, there's this question, you know? Because otherwise I was like, I was somehow maybe thinking that I thought I'm obliged to be a girl. And then I said, it could be also something else. So I think it was, I don't know if I cannot remember when exactly it becomes something very deep on me, or but I think I couldn't really define myself in a binary way, and I didn't know also that there is this choice to be not binary. So in my practice, I like artistic practice. It's I think before that, then I identify myself as a trans non-binary person. There was something about it in my way to see the things, to do the things, to create, to put the things together. But it was not conscious. It was something like not conscious. And then when I define myself as a trans non-binary person, it becomes conscious. It becomes a a big political question in my work, and something that I have had to define. Yeah.
Define or
Yeah.
And your second performance, which you will be performing tomorrow here as well, is Farsi. It's called Farsi, and it's about the Farsi word, the Arabic word. You corrected me before, for gender not existing, jinsiyat, right?
Yeah.
It means matter. So whenever someone's asking you what's your gender in Arabic or in Farsi, is asking you what's your matter, right?
Yeah, because the jinsiyat, it's like like in French, it's like sex, it's gender, and gens, it's your sexual part. I'm so sorry, my English is so...
Your sex, yes.
your sex. And then, it's something about the materiality of something, like object, or because for the human being, there is not this question about the materiality, so it's mostly about the object. But if you think about it also for the human being as the same way, in the same way, it becomes very interesting. So that's what I'm playing with in Farsi. But Farsi, it's the name of my mother tongue. It's Farsi, and in French, Farsi means to put something in something, or to fill something with something. Yeah.
To stuff,
Yeah.
really. Okay, the audience has to talk really loud because you don't have microphones. We have all the power tonight. But feel free to intervene and to stuff us, our conversation with please continue. So it means to stuff, so to give meaning to. Is it how are you using the French meaning of the word Farsi?
It's mostly something like in a sexual way, I think. But it's also could be something like in a, when you are angry and you are like full of something, you know. It's also in this way. So, yeah.
And I'm gonna save this question a little for later. How both of you, how explicit is how important or how crucial is it for this part of your life to be in your work? How important is it? How do you really prioritize, or do you even not see another way of making art, or is it still a choice for you to talk about binary, non-binary, or is it?
I go.
Do you know?
I think I could not to see the things in a different way than in non-binary way. And it's not like about to doing work about non-binarity. It's always to mind about it as a part of me, as a part of my life, as a lifestyle. So, yeah.
And is it going to be in your next performance as well? Is it?
I did a next performance after Farsi. And I think it's a part of it.
What about you, Tucké?
Yeah, I think it's quite similar. I would also say that I'm, in a good way, have no choice to do it different, or that's how I live my life. Also, I don't know. Also, as a friend, as a godfather, as someone that loves to have friends in the house. I mean, I'm trying to do the best life for me and the people around me, and art is somehow very helpful because it's because it has that fictional a power. I mean, it's not, in a good way, it's not related to reality, and also reality I cannot identify with. So, yeah.
And by your work, do you mean, do you see, because you're a spokesman for a council for the Asocialen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you also have Boiband, which is performing here tonight and which has this focus really present. It's not really, it doesn't feel like a focus, but it feels like a natural way of the post-binary to be present in your clothes, in your texts, lyrics.
Yeah.
And what do you see as the practices that you interweave it in?
I mean,
The primary.
yeah, my work always starts with or I think most of my work is born because I was missing a band like that, or an organization like the Central Council for the Asoziale in the world. And I was waiting for some time to see if someone is doing it.
Can you maybe tell a little to our audience about the site? Because
The Central Council?
yes.
I mean, yeah, it's complex because there are many victims of the Nazis in Germany, and they are like defined victim groups, but also there are more victims than defined by the victim groups, and there are still victim groups left that are not accepted by the German government, which is a problem for me. I mean, also like more than 30 years, 70 years after the liberation of the concentration camps, there is something like, I don't know, a continuity or a discontinuity in blaming Sinti and Roma, in I don't know, not also in homophobia. I mean, it's also, I mean, and then it is intersexual more than the victim groups are telling us that the Nazis defined. And there's, for example, there was one from the Nazis defined victim group which is called Asoziale, which is a term that is could be understood as antisocial, which is of course something the victims, which is a very heterogeneous group, couldn't identify with. Expect of I don't know, communists, for example, also always were able to somehow be proud of being communists, even if they were, I mean, persecuted. But for those people, it was much harder, and also the reputation, or reputation-wise, it stayed difficult also after the liberation. And I don't know, people were sterilized, and it was also that talking about the persecution of homosexuals, for example, then it's just, or I mean, I don't want to blame gay men, but then we are just talking about gay men. We are not talking about lesbians, and we are not talking about the person that might be stood under the umbrella of the second sex that Magnus Hirschfeld invented. So there is a big question for me where all those people went, or how their life where they then lived. And it is quite difficult in a historical way to look back and then queer people, or tell that people have like maybe a trans-masculine potential, because it's not so easy to say if there was, for example, a lesbian butch dyke, or it's not so easy to say, because also the thing is that those people that were persecuted weren't able to speak for themselves, and this is a big issue, which is also complicated for me to do it with my organization. But I mean, trying to reach some visibility for that victim group, and also discuss that term asozial.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, also, but yeah, I mean, my work is always like then again shifting between finding ways to cope with visibility and invisibility,
Yes.
which can be good and bad on both sides.
On both sides, but
Yeah.
what really drew my attention as to this talk and the combination between you and Sorour here on this stage is that you really focused on denomination, on the name not being, you really, I think in your speech you even talked about the word asocial and not being, you wanting to defend the word, to take it out of its context of asociality or anti-sociality, and in a way you are also doing that with introducing gensiet, or even bringing it to people's attention that gender is a linguistic aspect as well, a linguistic question. And that's what I asked you both to do before tonight, is to think about, one, I think it's so important to react to the current vocabulary and to react to words that don't fit, or to new realities. But I also asked you to think about maybe introducing new words into our vocabulary, and I don't know, maybe it's interesting to use the meaning, or to introduce the use of gensiet as to our language. Instead of asking what's your gender, we could be asking what's your matter, or what defines you, what's your origin, or what's your material. And as for you, who you actually were already prepared because you have the Herm menu. Mm-hmm. So tell me, both of you, maybe who is feeling most ready to talk about this linguistic aspect and how much it means to you when you find yourself in a new reality that's not defined by society, right? Because I think we come into the world as people who feel themselves and then are reframed into what society thinks we should be, no? Mm-hmm. And then you both made a step away from that again. So I'd like to know which new words you would like to introduce, and how and why you are fighting language as well.
I think for me in Farsi it's not just the question in Farsi, it's also about the difference between the languages, my mother tongue and French language, and it was for me a way to say how like Farsi it could be a very queer language, and it's also for me to say that you know, because in Europe, the thinking it's like that the white European people are already very queer, and the queer culture it's issue of something of whiteness. And for me it was also to say that it's not at all that. Then for me the queerness it's totally issue of the culture of people of color, and also it was a way to say to define something about my identity, because when I first come to Europe, it was always about this thing of a little girl from a Muslim country and a little victim of something, a patriarchal, and it was also for me to also to put question on it and to define also what it means exactly to be an Iranian person, and to open this identity aspect of my identity Yeah,
I think there's several. I think you were heading to. I think you were.
to open this discussion about also to be issue of a Muslim countries, and also what is the image of the Muslim people in Europe, and all these things. Yeah, so.
And so you were telling me that what you experienced in the queer world was actually more. How do I say it? You yourself use the word racist, right? So you have kind of an extra layer on top of your queerness. I call this box ticking. If you are not only a colored person, but you're also, for instance, disabled and gay, and you're like a box ticking person, right? You have several layers of otherness, right? And as you mentioned, I got the feeling that it was even more difficult to be a queer person from Iranian descent here than having to explain to your parents at some point, hey, I went to France, and somewhere in the process I changed a little or a lot. How do you experience this closedness in a niche that profiles itself as so progressive? How do you how do you feel when you encounter racism or Islamophobia here in the queer world?
I think it's very complex, the word of queer and queerness, because there is many different way of being queer, or different community of queer person or queer people, and which is very, very difficult to put all these things together. And I identify myself from a queer community of people of color. And there is also the racist queer people. There, because it's a title that the people could just put on themselves to say, but for me, the queerness, it's really a lifestyle. It means that you are in your work, in the way that you are in relationship with the other person in society, and all these layers. You are queer, and you have to be queer in all these layers. And for me, I think I have with Islamophobia and the queerness, it's a question of visibility, because the queer people of color are not visible at all, sometimes in some countries in Europe, or really a little bit visible. That's a big issue, because always when we are talking about the queerness, it's always the white, rich people who are taking place, and it's something that I'm like, it's not possible at all for me. And about Islamophobia, it's not something related just to because the Islamophobia, it was like 2 first years that I just, because I'm not also from I cannot identify myself as a like really Muslim or something. I'm issue of a religious family and a religious country. And I have a big Shiite culture, and I love many things about this culture, but I cannot really say that I'm Muslim or I'm not Muslim, and what I have to say if I'm Muslim or not. But it was mostly about the projection of the other people on me. They say, it's also mostly about before my coming out, because after my coming out, I was finally the person who came out from these Muslim things, So everybody was very happy with that. And I didn't have problem after, because I become someone else for them. So, but before it was very hard. It was like I was saying something, and when I was a student, I was like always this problem. When I was saying something, the people was like, that's must be that's very religious to say, this word of, I had to always to say, okay. I think there is a big question about being woman and being Muslim, because always being a Muslim woman, it's like, yeah, you are victim, or,
And that's what you felt in the relief when people noticed that you were outed, that they felt that you had released yourself from something that they perceived as an imprisonment.
I didn't understand you, but I think that it was
don't
like
understand me
a
either.
projection, because I don't feel that I released from something, or because before my coming out, I wasn't binary either, and the people who was judging me, they are the straight people, they are the white straight binary people, and you said, oh fuck.
I think that's what the question was about. It was about whether people perceived. So people, I think, assumed that you were religious by your origin. That's the first assumption. And then second, when you were outed as non-binary, that they felt that you had taken yourself out of a prison, almost. Like the perception is put on you twice, no?
I think I don't mind about this projection at all, even when before, or even now, or forever. It's just aggression. It could be aggressive for me, but otherwise I don't mind about it. I didn't try to change it at all, And whatever they think, the people, if I released or not, or I had a problem or not, or I have a problem or not, or yeah, I answer you. Yeah.
And Tucké, is this something that you recognize in some way? Not the. I mean, you could be coming from a religious background, and I'm assuming you're not, right? But did you, in a way, feel that you broke away from something? Let me rephrase it, or just ask another question altogether. How do you perceive your environment and the faultiness of maybe a setting that you of like-minded people, and still there is some room for improvement? How do you perceive it?
Yeah, I also perceive that there is like a few Western standards that are like forced on everybody, which is not making it better. But there is, I mean, I also have to I have big issues with that. How's it called? With that obligation of having a coming out. Or I mean, I had tons of coming outs in my life, and I'm not sure if it will go on forever, or if I just stop it, and because I mean, I know who I am, and I have a pretty good time in my apartment, but the issues are really starting when I leave the door and people want to know who I am. To sometimes, I mean, now I'm a bit mean, but sometimes to feel good about themselves tolerating me or other people, and therefore I just have to come out. And this feels a bit rude for me, because I already have a life. And I also like have friends that support me, or I don't know, I also have like lovers that are then, yeah, also like I don't know, from some, I would also go that far, from white people are not being trusted to be soft lovers. And
That's a prejudice I didn't know.
yeah, because it's about whiteness then, and it's about othering people, and it's about also yeah, I don't know, thinking that of course then that there are contradictions that are not able to get together. But I honestly don't see a contradiction there. I just see that there's a big pressure on people that already have a life. And yeah, which is rude.
I love the sentence. I'm just savoring it.
Yeah.
I don't feel like asking
Yeah.
more now because it's
And also just one thing, also I'm also not very convinced with that term of queerness here in Europe, because I mean, it seems to me like that it's coming from the United States, which is okay for me, but I mean people blame other people on the streets, and honestly, there was never a person that shouted after me in the streets, "You are queer." There were so many other words, but this is not. I mean, it feels like queerness here is something that people put on their shirt as a title to yeah, I would agree in that way. It's just to make sure I'm from the future. I'm the next generation. I'm noble. I got it. I'm smart. And in that way, it's not working for me. And then there's also the step of empowerment is then missing. There, it's missing. There comes another.
How do you?
Yeah,
what do you mean?
because it's not that. I mean, there was no need to get queer back into my vocabulary. It just came in the 21st century to mark myself as someone from the digital age that got it.
So yes, do we need new words, or do we just need to adapt our minds to?
Yeah, I mean, there's like the other side from that is like that are people already ask to, but can't you empower yourself? Can you just make the step to empower yourself? Now you're hurt, now you're blamed, but please make some effort and do the thing you learned about empowerment, which is also not working for me, because there must be space to be surprised that people, how people deal with violence.
To be surprised as to how people deal with, you mean linguistic violence or behavioral violence?
Find ways to deal with that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's also a little. Yeah, it's a lighter version of violence than for me to ask people to empower themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is this something you recognize, Sorour? Is this?
I didn't understand the question.
Is this something you recognize as well? Does it feel like something you live to? Instead of adapting to new terms people invent, right? Would you rather? No, it's not it. It's not it. You said a lot more. You talked about the violence, and you talked about the schism between having the right or demanding the right to not finding this violence normal, right? Is that what you meant by having the right to be surprised? And also you said, I'm not comfortable with the word queer because it's not something that defines me, it's something that cages me, puts me in a cage again. How do you like, because I used the word before with you, and How do you feel about it?
I think for me it's interesting the way you are expressing yourself about the word queer. I could be agree somehow, but I think anyway we are in boxes, you know, because yeah, otherwise I think the queerness, it's also, in the street nobody, queerness maybe it's not enough politic as a word, because there is no aggression about being queer in society. Like when you are in the street, nobody say you are queer. And it's all the same about being transgender for me. Nobody in the street say me, you are transgender. They said me that you are pede, you are faggot, or which is not exactly what I feel that I am. But the first time that somebody said me that you are faggot, I was like, I was very happy to. So, I think it's, for me, it could be somehow political when I have conscious about what is queerness for me. And also I mean that there is a queer people like in the street, they are aggressed or something, not because they are like known as a queer person, but they are known as a non-normal person. And I think I respect that, because it's not easy to be a queer person like in a society. So there is also something that the queer people pay because of that.
And the denomination of courage. I forgot to look at you, audience. They were so interesting. So my brain break never was, and we're nearing to the end, I think. Do you still have questions? I'm still full of questions, really. After 40 minutes of talking, I think I have more questions as to what is feminine, what is feminine as a man, what is masculine as a woman. I think I'm still caged in the binary vocabulary that was given to me. I think I'm still minding how I was taught to sit like a woman, so I'm now undoing that, and it feels uncomfortable. So I have a lot of questions on this new subject. It's really new. I don't think it's a new reality. I think it's new how the openness in how we talk about it. Are there any other curious people? Oh, there are. You're just so shy. Yes.
I feel pretty happy that you're saying what you're saying. Yeah, I was just saying that I was happy that, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Carolina.
Carolina, I'm happy that you said what you said, and I think this honesty about where your position is refreshing for me, who's trans and queer, just because even though I identify in those ways, I feel a pressure with this new opening up to be queer than queer than queer than queer, and it's like this pressure to be constantly at the edge of this transformation. Even though I know it's a constant evolution, it can be sometimes a bit tiring, and I just want to say, okay, you know what I mean? So I thank you for saying the things that you said, and that kind of relaxed me a bit. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't remember them correctly, but I think that's the only way to address the confusion that I'm feeling, because I think you went through that as a sort of necessity, but in that way, out of us three being the norm, haven't. So you are forcing me into re-questioning everything I have learned as well. Yes.
I would say inviting.
Thank you for the invitation. I would love to. I think I'm going to save some time to talk to you after this off this stage and with no microphones, and respect the schedule that was given by Beursschouwburg. There is another question? Yes, please.
There's already a person with the microphone.
Ah, there's a question with the microphone as well. I can see this happening, so. No. Please come with the questions. We need to know everything. There is unknown.
Hi.
Hi.
So my question, I'm really interested in the conversation you guys were having about language, but also about sort of how queerness has, what you were saying about queerness being white and how you feel you don't identify with that because it's quite Western and coming from America. And I guess and I was really interested, I've been very interested in Farsi because I'm from Egypt and Arabic is very gendered. Everything is gendered. And I was really interested to know that Farsi isn't like that. So I guess, maybe you're both bilingual, I don't know, but I was wondering whether you feel more comfortable expressing yourself in terms of your queerness or in terms of your, I don't know what the word is, your identity that's to do with your gender or your non-gender or all of that. Whether because I have the same feeling, like in Arabic we don't have the language for it, so we adopt English and that's really problematic. So I was wondering whether it's more comfortable in French or German or Farsi or to talk about these things, or whether you resort to English or a Western language. I don't know if my question makes sense, but...
Thank you. It did to me, did it? Yeah.
I was the person. I think I do it both ways, or I don't know, more than both ways. I mean, I was trying to invent a pronoun that is like inclusive for everyone, which is ham, and it could work internationally, but it's, as I said, it's just a suggestion, or it's just an invitation to think about what words to use to welcome everybody. This is just a way to say that, but it's also, I also have to say that it's I mean, asking myself what the international, I mean, what in an international way can be understood, then I'm maybe too quick go to the English language. Yeah.
Do I see another hand raised in the back?
Yeah, there was the
Okay,
person
I
with
think
the
that's
red scarf here.
yes.
No?
No,
okay.
no, in the back. Yeah.
Sorry.
Also, I'm gonna share my the menu, the suggestion that Tucké talked about on the herm and the denunciation, the denomination is. I printed it. It's something I would like to share with you. I'm gonna leave it here, and at some point in the night, I would like to take it back home. But please feel free to look at it later.
Hi, my English is not very well, but I tried. I'm French, not a French speaker, sorry. And in French, we playing, if we can tell, with language for signs, for keeping word together, for the masculine world and feminine world together, for create a new world. Word, sorry, and same thing for pronouns. We invented some, and and English it's not very gendered, but in French we need to invented them. So we're doing that in French.
I recognize this in Portuguese as well, because you have the one letter difference between female and male, so it's replaced by an X.
Yeah.
Which
totally.
is, but some languages are not so flexible, but it reminds us that I think somewhere in the process of opening up our minds, we have to bear in mind that the linguistic aspect and the denomination is still present, and we have to think about how we address it. Not sure if there's time for a last question, but if there is one, just quickly ask it. And then, yes. Yes. Do we have a mic here?
How long you stay in Iran?
How long you stayed in Iran? I think that's for Sorour. Or were you in Iran as well at some point?
For you. 23 years. 22 or 23. It's like just about 5 years. I'm in France. I'm living in France, yeah.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
I can say also the same thing about the Persian language or Farsi. It's that I never have to say something to my friend, my Persian friend, that you have to use this pronoun or that pronoun. That doesn't happen because there is not difference between pronouns. But it's funny because when my friend is talking about me in like English language, I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't explain that what I prefer, you know. Yeah.
Well, at some point, and conversations like these and small talks that turned out to be big on big topics maybe won't be necessary anymore. But for now, I really thank you for your openness and for your kindness as well and your straight intelligence, right?